Hello.
Hello.
What
I
type
have a
of tea
minute.
are you drinking?
Okay, this is called lemon loaf. It's a Tazo tea, and I put like a little bit of sweetener in it. I'm a
Mm,
cake person. This means I don't have to
sounds
have
lovely.
cake. I can have tea, which is not as bad.
Which is not as heavy as cake.
Which is less carby, less sugary. I don't know what they're putting in this, but it's lemon loaf and rose or something. I don't know. My
Hmm.
partner
All
got it, and
right.
I'm like, this is good.
All right. I mean, I will try that for sure. That sounds
Yeah.
delicious. Hello, everybody. Bunch of people
Hello.
are saying hi.
Yeah, it's been a while. I know I haven't been able to go live this month because I was in a show and that took up most of my evenings. Either that or I was like traveling and stuff. And I know it's been a while since you and I have been able to get together. So I know
Yeah.
you've been busy as well, which is super exciting as always.
I know. I feel like with both of us, every time we talk, we're like, so what kind of busy have you been lately?
Yeah.
Um, Super busy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great that we get to finally jump on together, though. It's been a while. I haven't gone live in a while in general by myself either. It feels like if I haven't been traveling, I've been sick or there's been something
Mm.
going on with the kids. We had so much soccer the past couple weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, didn't you say you got like I think I heard this on was this like your podcast or I'm getting my mediums confused on which
You're good.
version I'm listening of you, but like one side of your face got like sunburned or something.
Yes, that did
I can't
happen.
tell.
Correct.
So
Well, it's not burning anymore. It was like last week, so I've healed and now my skin is just super dry. But yeah, thank goodness it's not half burned anymore. But yes, I had a half burned face for like a solid 3 days. And like half like down my chest too. I don't know why. It was only half, but it
do you
was.
need to
It was
pick that
that
up with
kind of week.
Apollo? I thought you two were good. Like what's going
We
on?
are good. Yeah, I basically was like, dude. That being said, like I'm super pale, right? So I burn all the time. And he was like, I didn't burn your whole face, so fair.
Okay, other thing I wanted to tell you.
Hmm.
So I have these candles up here, and I actually have one specifically for Hermes, but I've got like a little offering up here. I was about to light the candle to Hermes before this live because I've done that a few times now,
Hmm.
and I gotta know. It was playful. It wasn't like, oh man, I hate Emily, but it was just like a very much like, no. And I was like, what? And he's like,
Yeah.
you know what?
No, I don't think it's about me. I think that our guides are having a feud, and we're just gonna need to.
Oh, oh, I thought it was a hamster reference because you.
Oh, it definitely is. I think that's what it is. And the funny thing is I'm posting a video tomorrow about this very thing because someone has like was doing like an acting out of Hermes, and it's so accurate. I was like, oh my God, this is getting posted, and so I know he's just gonna be like, are you kidding me right now?
And that's
Why?
like for anybody out there who might be like, oh no, war with the gods. No, this like the feeling that I got very much from it was just kind of like no, no,
Yeah,
you could burn another.
it's
No, not
super
that one.
playful. It's super playful. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, I feel like
Um,
if Hermes doesn't like somebody, he's just not going to show up. Like that's kind
mhm,
of it. It's
mhm.
there's no time for that. But like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, getting a no is still him showing up. Like he answered. So I feel like that's a win.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Ah,
Yeah.
goodness.
Ah,
So yeah.
yeah. So we wanted to do a live today because we wanted to not just talk about our specific deities arguing with one another,
Yeah.
but we wanted to talk about honestly ghosts and all the really intense energy that's going on right now, the thinning of the veil, and all of that fun stuff. Obviously, Rebekah talks to ghosts all the time, but so do I. I just don't usually post about it as much, so we thought we would just chat about it and hang out, basically. So if you
Yeah.
do have any questions in relation to working like mediumship work as it pertains to just talking to spirits, ghosts, and entities, like feel free to ask those and we'll see if we can get to them, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. For those
Yeah.
saying I'm buffering a little bit, my I'm not on Wi-Fi. I find that it's better if I'm not. So hopefully it gets better. I actually would like to start out with a question because it's something
Mm-hmm.
that I get very often, and I have an answer, and I'm sure you have an answer. Does the thinning of the veil at this time of year, well, okay, first off, the first question, what does the thinning of the veil mean? And then two, does the thinning of the veil this time of year, does it actually make things stronger? And like, what does that entail?
Yeah. My thought process on it. First of all, the thinning of the veil is the idea that it is easier to communicate with spirits, entities, beings from other realms, etc., during certain times of the year, based on our essentially lunar cycle and astrology stuff is at the core of it in that sort of space. I always describe it as a Venn diagram. I do think it is easier, but I think it's mostly easier because of thousands of years of ancestral practice that reinforced that this was the time to do that across many, many, many different cultures. So I think it's more of the rhythms of Earth sort of thing, where it gets aligned with the energy essentially being easier to communicate during this time. I also think that it's not really dependent upon how on that either. I think sometimes there's elements of like the spirits all agree that they're going to be stronger right now, and there's stuff that is like kind of out of our realm of stuff that I think comes into it as well. But if the world is a Venn diagram and then the other worlds are kind of around it, interlocking with the Venn diagram, right? So like our world and then like the Fae world and the spirit world and whatever is like interlocking that. Personally, I feel like the middle section, the part where it crosses over, just gets smaller when the veil is thinning.
Mm-hmm.
That's my easiest way, or I mean, bigger, not smaller. There's more,
Yeah.
it encompasses more area. You know what I mean?
Yes. I like the hand movements. Like that makes sense to me. I use that when I'm like doing
Cool.
consultations, when I'm like, okay, so there's this feeling and it's like big, but it feels very small and it's just like it's fluffy, but there's a little bit of hardness. And I'm like sitting there and the person's like, that makes sense. And I'm like, great. What did I just
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. Yeah. So with my circle, the circles are crossing over more right now. And I think that throughout the year they kind of fade in and out. And if you're the more you're in tune with your psychic abilities, the more you might feel that or not feel that, etc. But that's like it's kind of like a breathing motion, is how I always think of it.
I love that. And yeah, I would say the same. And I want to bring attention to other times of the year that this sort of thing happens.
Mm-hmm.
Solstice, equinox, there are different holidays to different beliefs. I know for
Yeah.
some past loved ones, they, once again, because of how they lived when they were alive, they will be very connected to particular holidays, whether they're technically spiritual or not. It's the it's how we ingrain those beliefs while we're here that I
Mm-hmm.
think carries over. So it can be a very personal thing. It's like some people say they have dreams of their past loved ones on either their birthday or the past loved one's birthday or something like that.
Yeah.
Our belief has a lot to do with the strength of it, at least in my humble opinion. I agree with what you're
I
saying
agree.
on like sure the planetary elements of it and the astrological elements of it.
Mm-hmm.
Though I think this time of year, Halloween being as amped up as it is, or at least feeling as amped up as it is,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I think that feeling can also be psychological because we're all like, oh, it's that time. The ghosts come out at Halloween, and it's like,
Yep.
yeah, though they can be out,
All the
anytime.
time.
Yeah.
I think
So I think it's
I do think
psychological.
there's an interesting energy with that though, because like some people are
Mhm.
like, oh, the veil was technically thinning. It's technically thinning tonight based on like a lot of ancient cultural beliefs because of the moon and the whole situation with that. And I'm like, in modern times, it's actually thin for like this entire week encompassing Halloween because of the energy of collective being so hypercharged to this time. It's opened the window further, at least from what I've channeled. And I'm not saying that's 100% guaranteed. Also, different areas on the planet open the veil at different times too, are thinner at the different times as well. But I completely agree with you on that. Like your beliefs seriously have a like support that energetic change, especially when it comes to collective all agreeing on something at the same time, like Halloween.
Like we're all connected or something.
Yep.
It's like,
What?
wow.
No way. Oh, thank you for the flowers. They're
And
dancing.
thanks
It's
for,
cute.
yeah, thanks for talking and being on here. I've had a few people talk about like what is the veil. I feel like it's just terminology. It's just sort of like when I think of a veil, I think of like something literal where it's like it's something between you and everything else. So if you have a very
Hmm.
thin veil, you can see through it and they can see you. So
Hmm.
I guess I take that literally. How do you take that?
Pretty much the same. I think it's terminology for understanding the space between realms, the in between,
Hmm.
I guess is the best way to describe it. So if there's a border or a curtain or whatever between us and seeing the spiritual energy around us, whether that energy is fae or dragons or ghosts or you name it, like just in general, different beings that we may or may not be able to see throughout the year. When the veil is thinning, it's just emphasizing that it's easier for us to perceive what is there all the time. That's what I think.
Yeah. And I got a quick question from mine, and then I would love to hear, because I'm sure you're getting comments and questions as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Last thing on the veil, there's a question pertaining to increasing the positive vibes coming through the veil, or like with veil energy, or these kinds of time. So for me, I consider it more of a proactive sort of thing, not necessarily a calling a particular kind of energy. And I always encourage people to call the energy that they want in their space, and then
Hmm.
to not allow, oh, thank you, the energy that doesn't work with them. So for some people, they
Hmm.
thrive in the kind of chaotic energy. Now, for other people, chaotic energy might be negative to them. So when it comes to positive energy and working with positive energy, this is stuff that you can work on throughout the year. And it's just a matter of setting your intentions, and for whatever kind
Yeah.
of cleansing you do, even if it's just, saying a prayer, or just saying a statement in your home. Cleansings can look a variety of different ways. I won't get into all that right now, but there are things on my Q&A playlist, open practice sorts of
There's a
things.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, and on YouTube. But yeah, I think it's important not to assume that the thinning of the veil means negative, bad energy. So
Hmm.
that's just what. Do you have anything to add on that? And thanks for the gifts, everybody. I appreciate it.
I fully agree. And honestly, in my experience, more of that negative, I hate calling energy bad because it's really neutral morally. And so, like, the world doesn't operate on our sense of morals. And so, so it's hard for me to say, like, good energy, bad energy, but like dense energy, challenging energy, negative energy, whatever. I do think that actually more oftentimes comes from people than it comes from spirits and spiritual energy space. And so, with this time of year and with things being as sensitive spiritually as possible, if you're feeling uncomfortable or if you're feeling concerned about that, just do some shielding and protecting. Like, just protect your space. And chances are good you might just need a refresh on that. Also, your guides are there to help with that. Ask them to help with that. Like, if you really don't want certain types of energy to come through to you right now, if that's not something that you feel okay or comfortable to handle, like, ask for them to have some protection there and help you block those out or help those not come into your space. Like, that is part of what your guides are for. So that's the other part I would say with that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I fuzzed out for a second because I was like, I'm reading, but now I'm not. Anyway,
No,
um,
yeah, you're good. You're good.
yeah, once again, it goes back into the psychology of it. There are a lot of people who I made a video like 3 years ago where I was just like, all right, it's Halloween season and a bunch of people are about to do some really stupid stuff. Like, that was literally me in the video being like, please don't be dumb, because it might be that time of year, but you can still be smart, not running
Yeah.
drunk into places and wake people up. It's not okay. It's not okay any other
Mhm.
time of the year, like that. That was me. That's that chaotic energy that I sometimes do draw. So anyway, questions on your side?
Yeah, I've had a bunch. Hold on, the bunch just moved up, so I gotta scroll down a little bit. Oh, one person says, does the thinning of the veil also affect things like random smells? I've noticed that more lately. Yeah, that is one of your clair senses, and you're probably smelling things from the spirits around you. And that might just be one of your senses waking up more too. So one of the psychic senses is smelling energetic information, basically, which is your clairsalience. And that means sometimes you get random smells. I have the worst sense of smell ever. So whenever I'm doing a reading and I get a smell, I know it's because it's random and spiritual and not from my house because I can't smell anything. So yeah, it can definitely it can definitely affect random smells.
I have a few videos from not far back on mine as well talking about Clairsalience, not only what it is, but the comment section. Like, if anybody out there is like, do I have Clairsalience? I've smelled random pipe tobacco or I smell my grandma's perfume. You are not
Someone just
alone
said
in those
bacon.
comment sections. Bacon, that's a big one. Around here, bacon is big. Like, people smell
Hmm.
it randomly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so that's definitely a thing. You can smell energetic information from like the ghosts and spirits or energies around you. That it definitely happens. It definitely happens.
Mhm.
Um, Also, have you ever seen ghosts at a Renaissance fair? Do they think it's fun or strange that we dress up? That's a great question. I love that question. I have seen ghosts at a Renaissance fair. Have you seen ghosts at a Renaissance fair?
I
It
brought ghosts to
honestly,
a Renaissance fair.
of course you did.
So this past time going to the Renaissance Fair, I was with, let's see, Jimothy came. Uh, Fanny decided not to come because she's been hanging out
Hmm.
with us more. And then my friend Sorsha, her spirit pal, it's funny calling him a spirit pal, Adam, he came. He's very into making sure he looks appropriate. And then I was like, oh,
Hmm.
Rupert's coming. We got to be sure that he is dressed up.
Uh-huh.
Rupert dressed up as a pirate. I was so now he's like, why did you tell them that?
Oh, I'm so happy about that.
We actually went to this stand that like had a bunch of like clothing there, and they like tried it on for us. And it was like the most fun because they can try it on like on an energetic sense and walk out with
Yeah,
us, where we do not have the cash to be putting $500 down on some of these things. But yeah, I've seen spirits there. I've seen people's past loved ones there before, and they're
yeah,
just having a good time. I think it's a great bonding sort of thing. If they loved it when they were alive, what would keep them from it when they are past? If they want to stick around with their, loved ones who are still in this form. So,
yeah, yeah. In a book once I heard that Renaissance fairs themes are just weird and British, and I just love that so much because it's just like there's no theme there. So yeah, I've seen ghosts and stuff there. Ours is held, or it used to be held, like out in the forest. And there was a lot of native spirits, and they tended to kind of clear out and just kind of sit at the sidelines and watch and be like, "This is something that's occurring." Like not they were upset by it, but more just like odd.
yep.
And so it's like always nod to them. But yeah, I have seen ghosts at Ren fairs as well. And also people like to bring items that they end up charging with a lot of energy. And a lot of times I have seen ghosts that are connected to those items that have gone from fair to fair to fair or whatever like that, that are very connected to that as well because they're so hypercharged, or sometimes even got them at like a thrift store situation and that item might have not the greatest spirit attached to them. Um, and it just tends to be a collectional space where people like bring these things, and a lot of ghosts and stuff kind of hover around that too. But they also like some ghosts are really passionate about their craft that maybe has been lost for a really long time and will show up and like help man booths and do those sorts of things and all sorts of different stuff. I've also seen ghosts, not as many, and I always tune out people's past loved ones because it gets too much for me unless they ask. I'm not going to tune into your past loved one. It's if you're in a reading with me, if you ask, I will open up that room in my brain, but if not, it's closed because I don't, it gets overwhelming. So I
Yeah.
filter it really clearly. But
Yeah.
ghosts are different. I'm pretty much open to those all the time. But even places like Comic Cons or anime cons and stuff like that, I've seen ghosts there too that will have tagged along with a human they really like, or maybe they're from the building. If they're from the building, so confused. Like ghosts that like are just in the convention center or whatever, or like maybe came in with someone on accident, something like that, like pure confusion, pure like what is going on has happened many a time.
Yep. Yep.
Great question.
I will also, I will drink to that because all of that. And
Uh-huh.
I'll also say too, like, we were kind of talking about like the branching into kind of mediumship and answering different questions on that as well as like
Mhm.
as far as psychic mediumship, being psychic, that sort of thing. Um,
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that for you, because it's similar for me too. It's kind of like, as far as, I don't know if you'd call it density or vibrational level. And I don't, once again, I don't mean good vibration and bad vibration. I just mean like,
Yeah.
I kind of see ghosts hanging out on our plane. I kind of see past loved ones hanging out with people. And then they're like
Mm.
spirit guides who are kind of above that. And then they're like higher beings and that kind of thing. For me, I'm the
Yeah.
same way. When I'm out and about, if I'm tuning in, it's primarily to ghosts because I'm Rebekah the Ghost Guide. Wow, what a title I have acquired. Um, though past loved ones, it's more so every now and then, though it's primarily like people that I already know or people that I know
Mm.
with friends. And then spirit guides, it's at least for me, is always a very intentional sort of process because I feel like
Mhm.
otherwise that can get really invasive. It kind of turns into a, oh, I'm reading you for your guides, even if they don't know. And that just always set wrong with me. So the point of all that being, it's important to note that with any abilities that one has, you can work with them to have them on at different strengths once you're able to get
Mhm.
there. That is
Yeah.
safe for you. For me, tuning into past loved ones all the time, it is exhausting because there sometimes is that kind of, sometimes there's a desperate feeling. And that's not a
Mhm.
bad thing. It's just, I'm also of the belief that we are meant to, I was about to say cohabitate, but now I'm going to say collaborate with the spirits, even if that just means like, lighting a candle for your past loved one on their birthday or, talking with them. I always say people are
Mhm.
like, oh, I feel disconnected. I'm like, when was the last time you talked to them? Oh, can they hear me? Try it.
Mhm.
Like, I, I'm a very
Yeah.
honest person when it comes to things that we can do here to create a two-way street, not to keep our past loved ones here, but rather to say, hey, I know that you're doing stuff on the other side. Even if I don't know all the things that you're doing for me, I just want to say thank you. I brewed you an extra cup of coffee. If you can come by, that'd be great. Like,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
that's my practice. Yeah.
Krista and I just did a podcast episode on our feeling about tuning into past loved ones and like the connections that tend to be unhealthy with that in a lot of ways as well. For some people of like that clinging. So if you guys want more information on that and like some more philosophies, we do like an entire hour-long deep dive into like mediumship on the Alchemist Inkwell. We did that like 2 weeks ago. But
Listen
it's
to it. It
basically,
was good.
huh?
I listened to it. It was good. I'm over here like, I'm fanning on your podcast. I tell everybody.
Like, but we agree with you. That's what it is. The answer is I agree. Um, but yeah, because it's a different sort of energy. Like it's when you're talking with ghosts, and I consider ghosts, elementals, nature spirits, and other entities that are like on our plane, basically. So when I say ghosts, that's what it's kind of all encompassing. Um, and it's kind of like it's talking to like another person. Like that's how the energy feels. It's like, oh, it takes that much energy. They're standing here. They can affect our reality, like very, very similarly. And with that, they're they have their own thoughts, feelings, opinions. They have their own ideas about what's going on. They are not like spirit guides where they're motivated to just help you. And spirit guides tend to be, I don't want to say omnipotent because they're not, but they tend to be they're magical knowing beings, right? Like that's not ghosts. That's not elementals a little bit more and some different entities a little bit more, but like for the most part, they're like, hey, I'm doing fine today. Someone left some peanuts over there and I ate them. And you're like, that's a great conversation. Like, thanks for that. Like it's not as like it's a really magical, beautiful thing. And I think it's beautiful for, like you said, that collaboration. And it's to get an entirely different perspective on the world is seen through someone's eyes who has lived through it in physical form and now is living through it in spiritual form, which I think is beautiful and incredible. But you're not going to get in there getting a whole bunch of guidance. You'll learn a lot from them the same way you learn from people, but it's not to guide you. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense to me. One thing I wanted to address it real quick, and then I want to go back to this. Somebody
Yeah.
said that they wished me or one of us or a medium in general could connect them to their loved one. Hey, you don't need a medium to do that.
No, you can do it.
Absolutely. And that I will yell that from the rooftops. You have that connection. In fact, the way that I describe it is really when I'm doing a consultation, whether it's for ghost, guide, past loved one, it's me just tapping into their connection and offering some translation. It's never me going in and being like, oh, let me connect you to your past loved one. It's always me being like, you got the connection. I need to get into, I need permission to get into your energetic field, or, mind, or what have you, so that I understand that connection. Otherwise, it's not me connecting. It's just me reading.
Mhm. Yeah,
I think that's the base term
absolutely.
of where readings came from.
Yeah.
Though
I always feel
I
like a
also,
translator. Like I always feel like
exactly.
I'm the translator. Like it's not like
Yeah.
I'm creating the connection. You have the connection. I'm just translating the stuff that's coming through into human speak. um,
Absolutely.
the other thing that I do want to say with that, if you feel like, because a couple people are like, I always doubt myself, or I always think that I'm wrong. Ask your guides for validations of what you think just happened. That's fine. They'll send you, all of a sudden you'll look down and there'll be a coin on the floor, or your phone's going to go off, or it's going to be 11:11, or a bird's going to fly right past your window. I mean, they will do a million different things to validate you. But if you're like, oh my gosh, I think I connected, but now I'm doubting myself, ask them to validate it and let other stuff come in to prove to you in energetic or physical reality that that is the case. And that's totally fine. The whole idea of blind trust is rooted in a history of misogyny and like very, very heavily constructed church belief that we like need to get away from, because that's not the case. You can totally ask for further validation and that's totally safe.
Yes. Um, One of the things that, kind of going back into all that,
Mm-hmm.
as far as like ghost and guide and spirit guide and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
I always figure the main difference between like a go-to spirit guide is they understand the larger life lessons.
Yeah.
And in order to get you there, sometimes they got to be tough to do that. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. It's it's one of it's one of those sticky subjects where it's like I always tell people, I'm like, hey, it still sucks that we are living the experience live sometimes because we have to learn the lesson. I'm not sitting here and being like, oh, your feelings are invalid because it's all gonna be better. Like I know that no,
Right.
like we're meant to feel this, and sometimes it sucks. So I like, okay, so the midline, as far as like some past loved ones, and I know some past loved ones are able to tap into that higher awareness. I think with that,
Mm-hmm.
from what I've found, and I'm curious what your feeling is on this, they have to put aside their own biases from when they were alive in order to tap into something more full and more aware. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then as far as like ghosts go, and I'm putting a broad term over, earthbound spirits there, or earth
Mm-hmm.
chosen spirits there. I don't want it to sound like
That's
everybody's
fair.
stuck. Um, with that, yes, they see more spirit stuff. Are they tapped into larger life lessons? Nah, I mean, I've yet to run into one. I'm not going to sit here and be like, absolutely not. But like, typically, a spirit guide is the
Did
higher.
someone
Like,
just give you side eye on that one? Sorry.
what?
I said, did one of your ghosts just give you a side eye on that one when you looked away? I was like, are you making eyes at one of them? Like, not saying that you're not super brilliant.
Um, so you know what? This is gonna go into a whole new topic. I'm gonna open this topic right now because you and I were talking
Hey,
about it the other day.
get it? Uh-huh.
Um, so
Sorry, I just felt that. I had to call it out. It was great.
you're good. So Rupert sometimes is like, "Why do you talk so much?" Like I said, why do I talk so much? Because I do. And yeah, the side eye was definitely a judgment on my behavior, not
Uh-huh.
a judgment on like what the topic was. Which leads into, there's a belief going around, and I wanted to address this in something
Mhm.
longer than 3 minutes, and I wanted to address it with you.
Mhm.
There's this belief going around that when people pass on, like when they leave their corporeal form, that they
Mhm.
are entirely positive and they're entirely great and they have no problems whatsoever. They have nothing to work through and no mental things to overcome and be better about and learn those lessons and all that stuff, even if they didn't learn them in life. And suddenly they're just a whole new person that we can't even recognize because they're so dang positive. They have no negative emotions. And if we feel negative emotions, that's us being self conscious about ourselves.
I wonder what your opinion on this is, Rebekah. I couldn't guess. It's interesting. I actually haven't come across that with a lot of people recently, which I really appreciate because I could not disagree more. Um, I can't tell you the amount of people that I've channeled, and they'll come in and they might be more positive, but they're angry still at their loved one or upset at something, or like there's still their full expression of every range of emotion that they can have. And a lot of times people will be like, I'll be like, hey, I feel like there's this person here and they don't feel like a guide. Do you want me to talk to them? And people will be like, no, I do not want you to talk to them. Like, that's my alcoholic father or whatever. Like, I have no desire. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I said it, because I can already feel like all sorts of judgment and negativity coming through. Or I don't know if you've had this, the amount of very, very, very Catholic grandmas that have yelled at me because I'm trying to talk to them. It's a lot.
Catholic grandmothers or Baptist grandfathers?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very much like, don't talk to me, like, go away. And, or they'll be like, no, it's not worth it for me to talk to you to talk to my granddaughter. And it's like, okay, sorry. Like, she asked, not me. And usually that's validation for the person anyway, to be like, oh, that was her. Yeah, you're right. You tuned into her. I'm like, yeah, sorry. There's nothing there. Doesn't want to talk to me. But yeah, that it's that loving light kind of bypassing situation of thinking that when you move on, everything is instantly solved, which is also like, I talk a lot about, like, when people pass, they go to like a spiritual spa day, and not talking about when people decide to stay behind as ghosts as either part of their soul or their whole part of their soul that they're incarnated with. There's a whole layers of that. Um, but people tend to go to a spiritual spa day. They'll hang around for a little while and do the things that they need to do on planet or whatever. And then when they cross over, they might spend a couple days like recouping from life, or they might spend like a couple years recouping from life and healing and dealing with stuff and coming forward there. So sometimes people be like, I don't understand why they're so silent. I'm like, oh, because they're doing their own thing. Like, they're literally like recuperating after this life experience, which was really traumatic. I felt like they probably had a lot of pain and now they're like dealing with that. So that's another part of it too. It's like, if they'd immediately became that, then they wouldn't have that sort of spiritual spa day zone. Which is not, of course, the technical term for it, but that's what I call it. So
I call it the best form of retirement or spirit space, because sometimes I will ask them what they're up to, like where do they hang out during the day, and sometimes it's like, oh, I hang out with my granddaughters, that kind of thing. Though sometimes I'll get visions of houses or places or things that they enjoyed doing when they were alive. Pet. Yes. So yeah, that's one thing. And kind of going back to, ghosts, and you mentioned pieces of their soul. So I released a video a little while back. I have a cat eye filter on. It's probably like one of the few filters I ever used. And I felt really cool about it, but here we are. So I do have a theory for the people who are truly tapping in, because I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, those people aren't legit. No, that's unfair. Like that, I feel like that's hypocritical. I can have my own opinions, but I'm wondering if some of those people who talk to past loved ones who have no issues, and I know we talked about this too, it could either be ignoring the issues and being like, no, the judgment is from me and not the other person. Or it could be, I wonder if they're tapping into a version of the higher self of that person, where it's like the higher self or the full, I like calling it the full version of the self because higher sounds like two, but like, could they be tapping into the higher self, which knows what's going on down below, rather than the day-to-day part of that person that is living or existing with them on a day-to-day basis? Does that make sense? Did I make sense with that?
No, it does. I also think they could potentially be tuning in if they're thinking like, oh, it's all love and light, and they come in with this like, magical, all healed version. I think they also might be tuning into a guide that is giving them what the person needs to hear right then as well. I think that's another element that they could be tuning into, which is less of a past loved one and more of a like guide taking that role to like give the person, the client, what they need. Because sometimes I think people do need that, and that's fair. Like, and that's part of everyone's unique journey. So that's the other part of it too, is it's all depends on your own unique journey in that kind of space.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions really quick where that people are asking like how can they figure out if they're able to talk to ghosts or if that's their one of their skills or if they're a medium, they're able to do that. And I just really quick want to say like if you would like to, then it's for you. Like if you feel really drawn to it, if it feels like something that was would be what you really want to do with your psychic abilities, then that's the psychic ability that you can open up. Like that's most of the time how it works with energetic stuff. If you're really drawn to this type of energy work or that one, like that's where you're going to end up throwing all of your energy, which means that's where your energy is going to open up to. So as far as like how to figure it out, if it's something you really want to try, if it's something that you've always been really drawn to, try that. And we both have so many resources on both of our pages on how exactly to open those up. Um, but there's that. I'm also hosting a workshop on Friday, where I don't know if you've seen this, but I'm
I
doing
saw
an
the
in-depth
video and I was
workshop.
like, good. This is
Yeah,
good.
yeah, because it is this veil thinning time, and it's a really wonderful time going into winter to do earthbound spirit work or earth resident spirit work, where you're talking to ghosts, entities, spirits that are all around us, nature spirits, you name it. I wanted to do a workshop where I share all of my like techniques on how I do that and how to activate that and open that up, including a bunch of block pulls and activations and safety precaution stuff that you can do to do it in a really safe and healthy way. So if you guys would like to join that workshop, all the information's on my page as well. But if that is something you're really drawn to, so I am hosting that. So just to throw that in there too, if you want to go deeper with this work.
Yeah.
And I know
I
Rebekah does
saw
tons of
that.
consultations and stuff too. So
Yeah. Well, that I saw your video for your class and I was like, that's so great. Like I'm excited for you. I will be doing a Patreon exclusive tour. I'm not doing public tours anymore, but I am doing online Patreon exclusive tours where basically I've done this. I had a group of people
ooh,
from one of my exclusive groups come out, or like the Patreon exclusive community that I have.
yeah.
And I just walked around town and told them things about like, oh yeah, this is a bar. I had this happen. It was this guy here. Like I just walked around and was like, oh yeah, here's some history about this place. Like I love this
Mm-hmm.
town and I'm constantly looking up into history and that kind of thing. And then I'm just like, I I tend to look at the history after I meet a spirit because I'm like, what was that about? Like, do they belong here? Like they said they did. So I just like dive into it. So it's really like I wouldn't define it as a professional tour, but it's very much like if you were one of my friends and I was walking around town and I was like, yeah, that building there. Oh yeah, do you want to know about that building there? I know about that building. Like,
I love that.
that's a lot of
That
fun.
sounds so fun. I love that so much. That's amazing. Also, real quick, no, the information that's coming out in my workshop is not going to cover anything in any of the programs I've released before. It's all the new stuff. There's a lot of stuff. Rebekah and I talk about this all the time because we text, we hang out. But there's a lot of stuff that I don't share on public platforms that is always just like my process for this or my process for that. And I know Rebekah has very similar things and work we do. So this is really just focused on like ghost and spirit communication and the processes I have for that, which has been since I mean, I know you are very similar to this, but I've been able to see ghosts and spirits since I was like born. So it's been a really long time of developing these and working on these based on closing them out and reopening them and etc. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, what was I gonna say about that? Yeah, and I love that you're focusing on some of the things that I know you can do, though I feel like your community is learning that about you because it shows that, we can do consultations, we can do readings on all sorts of things, and we can focus on things that we really pride ourselves in. Like I know for you, it's cleansings, like, or what I would define
Mhm.
as cleansings. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Block
or
removal work.
block removal. Yeah, I was just like, what do
Mhm.
you call it exactly? I was like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I was
But
like,
no,
I feel
you're
like there's
right.
a
That's what I
term for
mean. Yeah. Well, it's the same with you though. Like all of your ghost stuff is amazing, but you do so much more. And I think that that's really cool that it's coming out to more of your community too. And
yeah.
yeah, I think that's awesome.
Well, it's the same
It's
thing.
cool.
Kind of going back into the past loved ones thing. I don't talk about my own. Like I've talked about my dog recently because she is
Mhm.
my immediate family, but I don't go into the stories about who I've seen who's passed. Some of those experiences are positive. Others are random, and I had to shove somebody out of my house after I hadn't seen
Mhm.
them after they passed 15 years ago. And it was like totally not awesome. And it wasn't, once again, it wasn't my judgment of myself. Literally, I looked up and I was like, you're effing kidding me. I'm sorry, what? But I can't tell those stories, or I won't tell those stories, because I have living
Yeah.
people in my life who might be affected by that. And I don't want to do that to them. That's not fair to them. So yeah,
Mhm.
we have these lives that are like all this all this stuff is going on, but we share some of it with all of you because we want to get that out there.
On that note, I had the coolest experience yesterday. So someone in our town started hosting something called Goddess Yoga. And so I had friends invite me to go. And usually I'm not big on yoga, to be totally honest. Because I think a
Same.
lot of the time it's been taken and turned into a workout situation. And I like it more for a meditation situation. And there's just not a lot of that. I live in a small ass town too, so like keep that in mind. But she had us dance with our shadows. Like she projected our shadow onto the wall and we had to dance with it. And it was one of the coolest experiences ever. Like I think everyone should dance with their shadow. It was so beautiful and like empowering. And I've never had any teacher do that in any situation or have that physical representation of your shadow. And I don't know if that's something that's like maybe people who go to yoga all the time do that all the time. I have never done that. And it was also a very not normal yoga class. It's awesome. I'm gonna go every week. But like it was so cool. So when you're talking about that, I was like, oh, I wanted to share that with you. And now
I love
everybody
that.
else too.
Yes. Okay. So what are the takeaways from this live? Go dance with your shadow.
Go dance with your shadow. It was the coolest experience. Like
I love it.
literally, it's your shadow self. Like anything that you don't like about yourself. And the craziest part is I was like, oh well, I like all of a sudden I like all of the stuff about myself because I want to dance with this shadow and I don't want the shadow to feel bad, which is you. Like it was so cool.
Okay, I can't wait until I'm walking. In fact, tomorrow it's gonna be warm enough. I'm gonna be in nature. Well, okay, warm enough. It's gonna be 78 and sunny, so that's still warm here. It's not
That's
hot,
warm.
but it's
Oh,
warm. We're
I don't function above 80. That seems like a balmy summer day to me.
See, I do. That's how Apollo and I had a disagreement about my skin. As I said, I got into a disagreement with Apollo on what my skin could handle, and I came out alive. That was good.
Yes. And well cooked.
And well cooked. That was at the beginning of the summer. I've coded since then. I feel like is that an act of worshiping a higher, to be like, all right, you hurt me last time, but I'm back and I brought my sunscreen, and at some point I'm not gonna need it either. Yep. See you. Like
It is a form of worship, I guess.
Apollo all the while being like, yep, she works with Hermes. That's what that is.
Yeah, very much so.
Oh
Oh,
goodness.
yeah.
Hello, people.
No.
Who are just we
Um, do you
was there
have,
something
I
you
know you share your ghost stories all the time, but do you
wanted?
have any stories? I wanted to ask since this is the spooky time of year of like some of the first times you remember like seeing ghosts or what that felt like for you, maybe during your spiritual reawakening too. So it's like people relate to that a little bit more.
Oh, great question. Okay, so
Pop
the
quiz.
mhm. One of my first memories was something very paranormal. I remember I was very small because I couldn't reach the doorknob, and I was wobbly on my feet. So
Mm-hmm.
walking was a relatively new concept at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was in my bedroom, and basically I was in the doorway and I was looking at the bathroom, which was across the hall. And I just got this huge chilling feeling, and it just kind of like went all over my chest. And
Mm-hmm.
then I looked at the window, and it was weird because it felt like the window was getting closer, but then this energy came through the window, went through me, knocked me over, and the next thing I realized, I was staring at the ceiling. So that was less than fun.
Damn.
Yeah, part of my spiritual journey, and this is what I mean when I talk about how guides are there for us to have us learn, part of my spiritual journey was to be afraid, because I had to
Mm-hmm.
learn to not be afraid. And goodness, was I ever afraid growing up. I was a part of a religion that was not supportive of things like that. My
Mm-hmm.
family didn't want to talk about them. The ones who did want to talk about them, I felt really uneasy about it. And go figure, now that my immediate family growing up is out of the house, like, we can talk about things and be like, oh yeah, the guy who walked up and down the hall, that was weird. Oh yeah, the little boy that showed up in video a few times. Yeah, right? That's wild. Like, it's been healing to be able to have those conversations even 20 years later. um
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot of my younger years I spent manifesting shields, what some might consider blocks, and they certainly felt like
Mm-hmm.
blocks for a long time. My abilities did a this for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
They would come about in times where I was in danger. That was another thing too. It's like when the instinct kicks in, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I see colors. I see colors of bad people. This is okay. And then it kind of did this again, because I was like, oh, I'm not around as many bad people, so I don't see the colors as much anymore. And then some other things happened, once again doing this throughout my life. Then I actively decided that it was time to figure out what was going on, because I remember growing up and I was just like, oh, it'd be so cool to be a medium and talk to ghosts. All the while I'm sitting there being like, I hope the thing in the corner doesn't talk back, like that kind of thing. Uh,
Yep.
just me being like, this isn't me. I don't do this.
100%. It's like blinders. You're just like, man, that's cool that they do that over there. Don't look at me.
Yeah, it's like, wow, they talk to nice spirits, and tell them about history. That must be cool. What is that thing in the corner? Like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was me. So in reawakening stuff, the way that things were designed for my life, if you will, it was a lot of having to choose to believe myself, because I had put up so many blinders
Yeah.
because they made me feel safe for so long. So I'm still getting my physical eyes to be at a level that they were before. However,
Yeah.
my inner claircognition, or my inner clairvoyance, in addition to my claircognizance, can give me full pictures.
100%. Yeah.
So sometimes I'll look away while I'm talking to somebody and just be like, oh, okay, so I'm seeing this color and this shape and that kind of thing. Um, yeah, a lot of it had to turn into me believing what I was getting. For a while, I was just like, I get voices in my head, and I guess they're mine because they're in my head. That was inner ear clairaudience. I had
Mm-hmm.
to figure out how the cadence sounded different, or how sometimes the thought was not from my train of thought. It would just pop in, and suddenly I'd be like, oh, the man died there. And then I'd be like, where did that come from? Um,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an experience in particular. I know moving to Wilmington was a huge for me. I moved into a very haunted house, and the spirit there, who we affectionately called Gertie, I've made a video about her. I may make more. Jay played Gertie. Um, Goodness, she'd be rolling.
I know
All
what
that.
you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
it's
so
time to
cute.
go to church. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She would do that. She would open the blinds, and I'd just be like, okay, I thought somebody was there, but now the blinds are open. And I know that didn't just happen on itself. So that
Mm-hmm.
was confirmation.
Yep.
One of the big things for me was the more I talked to her or perceived her, and some of that was being able to get emotions and kind of turning those into words of understanding. That's why to this day I'll sometimes say, I feel like they're saying this, or I sense that they're feeling this, rather than saying it is a quote, they're saying this. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
particular about how I give words, because I want to be respectful of
Yeah.
how folks talk. Um, yeah, it was really validating, because we started talking to her more, and I found her on the deed of the house. She lived there for about 30 years, and I found her death records. And that
Mm-hmm.
was huge for me, because I was like, wait, maybe it's not in my head. Wow. So I started to reanalyze, and part of writing these skits was reanalyzing a lot of the experiences that I had been having over the last 4 years that I hadn't really talked about because, you know, I didn't want to be that kid. Now I am that kid. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
yeah, writing it out was huge for me. And I always recommend it to other people. Like if you're trying to figure out what was real, what wasn't, ask your guides to assist you in remembering from a perspective, not just from your own, but also from them. And you will, I mean, at least in my experience and from what other people have also said, things will come out to you that maybe you didn't realize at the time because, you know, distractions and stuff. But yeah, that was
Mm-hmm.
me. I'm curious, kind of the same question for you.
Um, yeah. So as a kid, it was a lot for me, like a lot, a lot. Just seeing imaginary friends, as people would say that, and I'm like, really? Because he's an old guy that used to be a police chief. I don't know why I'd want to hang out with him. Like,
Yeah.
okay. Um, Yeah, no, the house that I grew up in was a kind of ancestral cabin, really, really tiny. My dad's mother bought it in the 60s, and it was super tiny log cabin on the lake, really cool, really spiritual, beautiful energy there. Um, but a lot of it was like nature spirits and nature entities just around and hanging out because we were right by the lake. As far as like ghost specific, my dad used to have a like off building. We called it the fort. It was like a shed but bigger, and like he would tune his skis there because I'm from ski town. That's what we do. And his like basically kind of father figure would hang out in there with him, and I remember seeing them together and being like, "What are you guys doing?" And my dad's like, "I'm tuning my skis." Like, what are you talking about? Like, oh, you're both doing that. Like, okay. And just like go on about my day, thinking that was totally normal that everyone was seeing that. Another one was definitely I was a little kid maybe 5 or 6. I don't know. I was pretty small. And we had a lot of black and white photos of old family members around the house. People that I still have no concept of most of who these people were, but they were someone's relative of something. And in the basement of the house, we had tons of photo albums that were all black and white photos of someone's relatives or something. We have a lot of ancestral, like, people have done the ancestry work on that side of the family pretty extensively. And I remember looking at a picture of someone on the wall, and like he came out of the picture and just kind of stood there and waved, like smiling, like trying to be nice. And I was like, oh, that one's dead. And just like walked away. And my mom was like, what? Like, well, what? What do you mean that one's dead? But it was dead. It wasn't
Yeah.
a live one. And I also, one of my best friends growing up, I mean, she's still like my best friend. She had a ghost in her house who was like a 19s and 20s housewife and had many opinions on things. And every time we stayed at her house, could never fall asleep because she would come in and just like walk back and forth in the room. And I could see her, and I always would be like, can you see her? Like, your ghost is here again. And like, they know about her. Like, her mom could see her too. But she'd be like, no, I don't see her. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I guess I'll just go to sleep. I wouldn't stay at their house. When they were getting their house remodeled, I wouldn't stay there because the ghost was so mad, like so mad. Started getting really afraid of like how angry this ghost was, and like didn't know that ghosts could be that mad. And then once I did realize I was seeing ghosts, I was like, again, tried to block it off. I got really, really afraid. All of my high school years, especially my senior year, my mom slept in bed with me because I could see stuff and I didn't want it to get me. And for some reason, having another person in the room helped. So I was like 18 years old with my mom sleeping in bed with me. It was great. And props to my mom. She was so sweet and understanding about it. Now she really gets why I have the career choice that I have, though.
Mhm.
Um, Big time.
Yeah.
Completely understands. Um, During my spiritual reawakening, this one kind of sucks. It's going to be a little bit of a downer, but it was very intense for me, and it's really cool. There was a forest fire, which there are often in California, and I was right at this like height of my spiritual awakening space, and I was talking a lot to my guides. One of my guides, Hope, was we were talking every night, and she was like doing it through electronics with me. Like I was really into that space of really reawakening and connecting. But this was the first time there had been a forest fire since I was like really trying to dive back in. And I was in I was in a meeting, basically at like my employment at the time, which was the horseback riding stable, and like tensions were already really high. People were freaking out. We did not want to evacuate the horses. It sucked to do that. And all of a sudden I get hit with animal spirit after animal spirit after animal spirit, like walking through me and like coming and sitting in front of me. And it was like, it started with squirrels. I have a squirrel thing, which I never really talk about. Squirrels mistake me as a treat enough where it's an inside joke that people are commonly joking with me about the fact that squirrels just like to crawl up me. It's a very weird sensation, and I don't know why. But sorry, with squirrels. um, and so first there was like 10 squirrels sitting like around my feet out of nowhere, and I'm like looking down, like, what the fuck is going on? And then it was like went all the way up. There was multiple bear that came through. And then I started like, I need to go to the bathroom because I was like crying because I was upset about it. And it turns out like they were just coming because they wanted the extra oomph to like pass on, I guess, was kind of the energy, because the way that the fire had worked, that it funneled them straight into like basically the water, and so they felt ungrounded, and so they were trying to like get grounded again so they could go.
Yeah.
But that was like a huge one for me, where I was like, okay, I see all of you, and I'll just open this door and I'll just keep pushing you through it and just pushing you through it. And I came home that night and I slept for like 12 hours. I was so exhausted because there was so many of them coming
Yeah.
through. So those are a couple of, I mean, there's been a lot more, but those are like the ones that really stand out as like visual.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that, well, two somethings. One, when you're starting out again, for anybody, it's super important to acknowledge your body and how it's feeling. I remember when I first started out, I wasn't doing enough grounding work. And so I had like these headaches that would last for way too
Mm-hmm.
long. So it was like, all right, and then the eye was like, okay, I will go. And I was just like, yeah, this is great. I'm getting all the stuff. This is so cool. And then like, I paid for it. So,
Mm-hmm.
and granted, in that kind of scenario, you only had so much time to do that. And sometimes the work finds you. It's just important, that the work doesn't find you every day, or you're not looking for the work if you're tired, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing, when you talked about slumber parties with your mom, one, I love that. I love that support. And
Yep.
two,
Debbie's the best.
yeah, like it matters so much. And we did another live on spiritual community. Though also, I always say, if you're worried about something in your home and you feel like you're outnumbered, get people in there to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Cleansings can be a whole bunch of different ways, even if it's just a bunch of people in your house turning up the music and saying, we are going to dance all the energy out that we do not like, and we call upon whatever you believe in order to make it stick. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think there's anything wrong. Like, sure, I want everybody to have this willpower on their own, but sometimes spirit guides can also be in the form of other people. And so sometimes we call on the other people. We call up on our spirit team, and we're
Mm-hmm.
just like, hey, let's all do this together. Like, there's no
Mm-hmm.
shame in
Mm-hmm.
numbers. In fact, I think that's great, because sometimes it really helps to just have other corporeal people around who are like, yeah, keep dancing, or like, yeah, keep lighting incense. We're gonna smoke this thing out, or something like that.
That's why I've always said, and I will always say, never go on ghost hunts, like where you go ghost hunting to like go talk to them in like buildings and stuff by yourself. Ever.
It's dangerous for so
Don't
many
do
reasons,
it.
even the
Yeah, it's a
physical.
million dangerous. Like it's
Yeah.
physically dangerous because you don't know the stake of the building and all these different things. And if you get hurt, you can't call for help. Like there's a million different ways. It's physically, if it's energetically dangerous, like just have buddies. Go with friends, please. And with that too, like if you're doing ghost and spirit communication, also making sure you clear ground and shield your energy. Never invite anything into your energetic space, please. Like into your physical energy, don't do it. Okay. You are stronger than anything you're going to encounter. You can stop anything. You can spread your space. You are the powerful one in the situation. Don't bring anything into that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Even your guides, you name it.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
you make your own boundaries. That's important to
Mhm.
note. And I'm also of the belief, because we talked about trans mediumship at one point,
We did.
and
Yeah.
yeah, like, I know for some cultures there's a lot of ceremony that goes into that, and I'm not here
Hmm.
to knock anybody's, long-standing
Yeah.
cultural understanding. Though from
Totally.
where I'm standing, I'd much rather talk to somebody out of me rather than have somebody in me talking through. Like, that's
Hmm.
a this is my safe zone. this is my
Hmm.
safe zone.
Yeah, and
Uh,
also with the cultural practices, that requires so much training, and there's ancestral stuff, and there's so much different work there. And if you're just starting out, it's just not a good idea.
yeah. Um, yeah, there's just so much trust that is necessary there.
Yeah.
The most I'll do is speak like them, but it's almost like it's still an impression. It's not like they're in me. It's more like if somebody's talking right here and I'm able to just like speak, that's as far as I personally go. Because once again, the world is invasive enough as it is. This is my
Hmm.
space. I want to keep it that way.
Yep. Totally. Um, yeah. That being said, like, talk to your ghosts, guys. Like, it's important. Like, they're here, they're hanging out. We were talking about figuring out a way to do some sort of episode where we actually like channel in the ghosts that the Ghost Guide team go and poke repeatedly until they get horrible reactions, and actually seeing what they say, like if we can channel them in from afar. So we're still debating figuring out how to do that. But like most ghosts are just like they're just people. Like they're just hanging out doing their own zone, their own thing. Like they're around, and it's a really beneficial mutual relationship a lot of times to like make friends with your local ghosts and just see if they're there. And again, if you guys want help with any of that, like both of us have resources available for free on our TikTok, of course. Rebekah does consultations and a lot of education in that way. I, of course, also do readings and stuff, but then I do have that workshop coming up on Friday to teach like the how to of all of that. If you really are wanting to go deep with ghost communication, we got
Yeah.
tons of stuff to help you.
Yeah. And something I'll also point out too, it's something I just offer. It's something I called a general consultation or a quick chat. It is timed. You can book 15, 30, or 45. You just get to pick my brain. It's not psychic mediumship. I always say it's intuitively led because sometimes we will
Mm-hmm.
get into subjects that I was like, wow, so you needed to get into this and I had no idea. Okay. But it's more of a conversation
Yeah.
where folks just get to ask questions about whatever, like based on my experience, based on growing their abilities. It's something I always wanted when I was
Mm-hmm.
coming back into this. And fortunately, I found the resources I need to through online courses. Like I took Emily's online course, and I also have folks in town and folks now across the world who I now talk to about these things. But I remember when I was first starting out, I was looking for resources and I was looking for somebody who just understood. And so
Mm-hmm.
the amount of times people come and they're just like, hey, this is going to be weird, but, and I'm like, whew, try me. And they're like, have you seen
Mm-hmm.
this? And I'm like, oh, okay. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like being seen is so important too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Someone asked what we think about spirit boards. I think spirit boards are absolutely fine as long as people understand they're going to get the communication they're asking for from said spirit board. Most of the time, what happens with spirit boards in general is people are like, oh, I'm going to do this thing. And they're either intending to talk to something negative and dark and trying to call it summon that through and using it more like a portal space, which is like a no go. Or they're taking it to a place and being like, speak through this board. And then when the ghost speaks through this board, they get freaked out and back off. So I think spirit boards are fine. Have the right intentions, just like with any psychic tool, and understand that they're probably going to work, and be ready to do something when it works. Like, well, what is it going to happen when it works? Like, have that plan already in place, because I think most of the time people just freak themselves out, and the ghost is literally just being like, "I'd like a cookie." Like, just that's the
Yeah.
the levels there. So I don't think they're an inherently bad tool. I just think they've gotten a very bad energy placed upon them.
Yeah,
You agree?
absolutely.
What's your thoughts?
I would absolutely agree with that. Something I would also recommend, it's a short film you can find on HBO Max. I found out about it because one of my performance mentors in college, she was the director of it. It's called Mikasa. And the reason why I bring this up, I did an interview with her, which is on YouTube, and we talked about how she gave spiritual representation that was excellent. And I, they're all intuitive, but she was talking to me because she was concerned. She was like, "Did we do this right?" And I watched the short film, and I was like, "Absolutely." Point of all of this, they use a Ouija board,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of freaking out, the guy is specific. He's like, all right, I think somebody's in here, and they have one ghost who doesn't
Mm-hmm.
want to have communication and is trying to mess things up. And then there's another ghost who's like, no, 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 but I want to talk. So it's just all very calm. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that. And the guy's going about it in a very respectful way. He stays calm because, yes, apparently, I don't know if you can hear that. We have helicopters tonight.
I
That's
can
so,
hear that. It's
yeah,
really loud. It sounds like a street cleaner.
yeah, we have some army bases like an hour and a half in two different directions away. So they fly things sometimes.
Hmm.
Anyway, um, yeah, I'm not gonna get into
Yeah.
opinions and things.
Yeah.
Noise ordinance and the city.
Yeah.
And well, anyway,
Oh, but someone also just said when you are using a Ouija board, make sure you say goodbye before ending. The same way you would say hello when you start talking. Like, be polite.
yeah,
Very, very much.
yeah, I'd say be specific, be calm. If it freaks you out, say goodbye. Like it's with any
Mm-hmm.
spiritual communication, exactly as you said. Like if you're unbalanced, whether that's your nerves, whether that's things you are on that are not prescribed and they get you a little out of the where your
Loop. Yes.
balance could be. Yeah, yeah, just if everybody could just treat spirits on any level with some respect and dignity and at least our version of humanity and our version of morals instead of being like, oh, they're gonna do. No, like
Mm-hmm.
talk to folks one at a time, treat them as they are individual sentient beings, and be true to yourselves. It's the same thing if you're having a conversation with somebody and you get bad vibes. Just treat it the same way and be
Mm-hmm.
like, oop, I gotta go.
Yeah. And
That's
that
what
being said, like
this is smart.
if yeah, and if a certain tool freaks you out, don't use it.
Yeah,
You don't have to. Like that's fine. Like there's a million different ways to go about this, and you don't have to. If someone's like, you can only use EMFs, or you only use this, or whatever. Like no, you can do whatever feels good, and that's
yeah,
fine. But yeah, they're full people, and I'm excited to talk about this. This was super fun. I do have to
yeah.
skedaddle, but I really, really appreciate this conversation. And just know, like, the veil is thin for this collective space about the next week as we go through like Halloween and spooky season because of collective intention for the most part, and like the shifting of the circles. And I think Rebekah's gonna post this to YouTube if you guys missed the first part of that, right?
Yes, I am. And plan is for it to be up tomorrow with timestamps and everything. So all of that information is on my bio. And I have appreciated this conversation too. So thank you for joining me, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And
Yes, thank you
yeah,
so much. And yeah, both of our links for stuff are, of course, in our bio spaces, and we appreciate you. And thanks for chatting about ghosts. And I love
yeah,
you, Rebekah. I will talk to you later.
I love you as well. Be safe, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.